الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حرمت عليكم الميتة والدم ولحم الخنزير وما أهل لغير الله به. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The third with your loudest voices in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman.
اللهم صل على محمد.
Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The prohibition of pork is a fundamental discussion in Islamic law, and a discussion which requires a thorough analysis, for it is a discussion from which many lessons may be learnt and many examples may be derived. As we know, each and every nation has their own eating habits. These eating habits have emerged from either years of cultural principles or indeed years of religious guidance. You find that when you go to each culture has their own significant eating habits, which they have sought to protect within their environment. And indeed you find that these eating habits may vary from one culture to another, because we recognize as human beings that part of our makeup, and indeed central to our existence, is the fact that we have to eat in order that we survive. Hence you notice when the Quran describes the Prophet as being a human like others, the Quran states that يَأْكُلُ الطَّعَامِ وَيَمْشِي فِي الْأَسْوَاقِ, that the Prophet eats what you eat and he walks where you walk. And that's why you find that each and every human being recognizes that they are what they eat, as in what we eat has a fundamental effect not only on our physical makeup but also on our psyche and our behavior in general. Hence you notice in the world today people are very particular about their eating habits. They want to make sure that they eat that which is not going to affect their health, but rather that which is going to prolong their existence. And this is no different from the Quran. When we find within the Quran in chapter 80, verse 24, the Quran states, فَلْيَنْظُرِ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِهِ. Let mankind have a look at that which they are eating. An extremely simple verse, but effective, that you as a human being should reflect on what you are eating, and whether it's having a good effect on your life, or whether it's having a detrimental effect on your life. So when you go and examine each culture in the world today, you'll see that their eating habits vary. For example, you may find the cannibals of Africa are willing to eat human beings, whereas the Buddhist monks in Tibet will stay away from any type of meat. You'll find that there are certain Muslims who may eat all fish, and others who may stay away from some fish. You'll find, for example, that there are human beings who indulge in eating the brain of a monkey. Some may even eat a dog. Others may stay away completely from eating pork, and others may even stay away from eating any animal because they say there's a bad karma around anything that is slaughtered. So what you find is that each community has their own eating habits. And likewise, the Muslim community is no different, and that's a point which needs to be understood. Why? Because when we tell others in our workplace or at university that I cannot eat so-and-so, when they reply to us why, we reply in the same way your culture has eating habits, our culture has eating habits. In the same way your religion has eating habits and eating directives, likewise our religion has eating habits and eating directives. There are certain things we are allowed to eat, and there are other things which we are prohibited. But an important question arises. Yesterday, when we examined the prohibition of alcohol, we said that there's a certain philosophy behind the prohibition of alcohol. But the question arises, so what's the philosophy behind the prohibition of pork? Because many of our community today have begun to be affected by a concept. What's that concept? A concept where they state that my friends who eat pork, there's nothing wrong in their life. As in the Muslim religion states that when you eat pork, it has a detrimental effect on you. I have friends who in the morning have a bacon and egg sandwich, and in the evening they may have pork chops, for example, from a Chinese menu, yet they are still healthier than me, and in some cases you find that they've looked after their physique better than I have. What you find therefore on this account is that certain people have begun to be affected by this idea. Certain people were affected by the concept that if my friend eats pork and it's meant to be bad on him or bad on her, then why hasn't it affected their life? That's a question we need to examine within the discussion. That the religion of Islam, when it prohibited pork, did it prohibit it because it said that it's going to kill the entire nation or affect the physique of every human? Or was there also spiritual reasons as to why pork was affected as well? Let's examine this in a number of stages. Number one, does our stomach have a right over us as human beings? Number two, are there times when pork is allowed to be eaten? If so, when? Number three, what are the physical effects of pork which many medical journals have reached a conclusion on? Number four, what are the spiritual reasons why we're not allowed to eat the pig because of the certain behaviors that might be taken? Number five, why does the Quran narrate that Allah may have changed certain humans into pigs? And what lesson was there for the human being? And number six, who did Imam al-Hussein refer to? On the 10th of Muharram, that when he got killed, Imam said, "Oh Allah, change his killers and humiliate them into pigs on the day of judgment." Which particular person? Let's examine this, and the topic will be dissected in depth. The first question that arises in this analysis is, does our stomach have a right over us? Normally, if you go to any religion in the world today, they'll say to you, what do you mean, does your stomach have a right over you? You as a human being, your parents have a right over you. Your wife may have a right over you. Your children may have a right over you. But what do you mean your stomach has a right over you? Only Imam Zainul Abidin, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, went into the depth of actually stating that even your stomach has a right over you. Because that work of his Risalat al-Huquq, if you have not read it, then you can't claim to be a follower of Al-Muhammad. Because it's arguably one of the most important works after the Holy Quran. In Risalat al-Huquq, Imam Zain al-Abidin, what does he state? He states in Risalat al-Huquq that the right of your stomach is that you don't make it a container for that which is unlawful. And you don't belittle it in a way that you lose your manliness, and that you restrain it at the time of hunger, not reaching a level of sluggishness. Please listen to these beautiful lines. The Imam says the first right of your stomach is that what? The first right of your stomach is that you don't make it a container for that which is unlawful. What does the Imam mean here? He means three different opinions. The first is, don't make your stomach a container for food which you've bought through forbidden money. In which way? The idea that there are some of us in this world who eat and drink constantly, but where the money came from for that purchase is another question. The human being, their money can come in halal or it can come in haram. As in, we know that the sustenance which God has written for us, there are two types of sustenance. One that you will run after, and another that will run after you. The one that runs after you will reach you. Our 60-month says it will run after you more than your death does. It will make sure it reaches you. But whether it reaches you in the legal or the illegal way is a different question. Because if now I know very well that I'm engaging in a particular job which is forbidden in the religion of Islam, or I know that I'm getting money from a particular job which is forbidden, then that food which I eat becomes unlawful. Someone says, well, so what if it's unlawful? It still allows me as a human being to be strong. Yes, physically you as a human will continue to live on the earth, but spiritually you will have nothing within you. Why? Because what you eat makes you as a human being. It remains part of your body for a certain period. Therefore it has an effect on you. When you eat that which you've earned in pure means, then you find a blessing that emerges from it. As in, how many times have you heard haram money? Forbidden money has no barakah in it whatsoever. That money which you earn illegally, for some reason, after a day or two, it's gone. You're thinking, why is this money after a day or two, why has this money suddenly left me? Because of the fact that there's no blessing around that money. Money without blessing, without the human being actually feeling what it means to earn legally, is not allowed within the religion of Islam. The Imam says the first right of your stomach is that what? Is that you don't make it a container for that which is unlawful. That's number one. Number two, the second opinion as to it being a container for that which is unlawful, don't make it a container for that meat which is not halal. Someone says, what do you mean? I say that if you go to certain parts of the world today, you'll find there are certain roads which they call the Arab roads. A road where you'll find many Arab cafes, many Arab restaurants and so on. You look at the name sounds Arabic, and you automatically assume it must be halal. That's it, because it's Arabic name. There's no halal sign outside at all. For all you know, the person may be from a Christian background, the person may be from the background of another religion completely, but he was brought up in an Arab country and he's put that name. In London, a chain of restaurants in a famous road in London, which do not even claim to be halal, but thousands of Muslims eat from those restaurants every week. When you ask them why, they say, well, the name is Arab, but the owner is not a Muslim. Nor has he ever professed that he sells halal. The owner, to his credit, when you go to him, you say to him, excuse me, you know that meat which you are selling, is it halal? He says, no. He says, I've never written it's halal, but because I'm on a road where there are many halal restaurants, people assume that the meat that I am selling is halal. Therefore, what do you find? The Imam says that the second opinion related to this is what? Is that don't make your stomach a container for that which is unlawful, meaning that which is not halal. That's why you find a difference in our school of Islam from other schools in Islam when it comes to eating the meat of the people of the book. In the school of Ahlul Bayt, we are not allowed to eat that meat which is slaughtered by the people of the book. You find, however, other schools in Islam says, the verse in the Quran says, lawful for you is the ta'am of Ahlul Kitab. They say that ta'am means what? Ta'am means the meat of Ahlul Kitab. So kosher, there's no problem with it at all. Kosher is slaughtered in the Jewish way, there's no problem with it at all. Imam replied, ta'am doesn't mean meat, it means that which grows from the earth. Herbs and vegetables of the people of the book, there is no harm you taking. But meat from the people of the book you can't. But would you believe today many Muslims, when they go to non-Muslim countries, they'll go into a Burger King or they'll go into a McDonald's, and when they'll enter, you'll see him having a Big Mac. You say, Habibi, you're having a Big Mac? What's going on here? And this Big Mac's not allowed. He replies to you by saying, it's the people of the book. And the Quran says, lawful for you is the ta'am of the people of the book. We reply by saying what? Ta'am isn't the meat of the people of the book. It's the herbs and that which grows from the earth, which if the people of the book are selling, there is no harm you eating from them at all. Therefore, the second opinion was to watch that which you are eating, whether it's halal or no. The third opinion, to watch out for the artificial flavorings and the emulsifiers within the food. What do we mean? We mean today that when you have certain sweets, you find within these sweets that there is E471, E262, E379. Our people don't care about these things. They say, I just see in the back, in the ingredients, it says E and F and so on. What you find is that when you look at this, this has a particular background. That certain animals which aren't allowed to be used within our products are what are used within this food. It is vital for us to watch what enters our stomach. Why? Because there's a responsibility according to the Imam that your stomach has a right over you. Your stomach is a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why in his next line, what does the Imam say? He says the right of your stomach. You don't make it a container for that which is unlawful, and you don't belittle it by losing your manliness. This is a beautiful line. Why? That stomach, when Allah gave you it, it was a nice, beautiful, trim stomach. Don't come back with a stomach this big to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's an honor. You look in the world today, and I tell you, I shouldn't be telling the people. First, I should tell those who sit on the pulpits. Because you find that there are some, when they're sitting on the pulpit, telling the human being, you know, physically you should look after yourself, and spiritually in tandem with each other. You look at him, you're thinking, Maulana, your stomach is sticking out of your qamis, and you're telling me about physique. The idea is that you have to practice what you preach. You can't tell a person that your stomach should be trim. So we're not asking people to have six-packs. You don't need to have a six-pack. But what we are saying is that at least make sure that that stomach looks like a man, not like a person who's lost his manliness. Imam said, do not let your stomach reach a stage where you belittle it by losing your manliness. You think when Muhammad would enter the battlefield, you think the Imams of Ahlul Bayt would have stomachs in front of them when they sit on horses? The Imams of Ahlul Bayt had looked after their physique, because the religion of Islam was not just a religion for the spiritual, it was for the physical as well. It wanted people to look after their physique. You find when the Prophet says, make sure you learn how to swim, make sure you learn how to ride a horse, make sure you learn how to do the archery. What you find with the Holy Prophet is that the Prophet was stating that your physique, your stamina, has to be looked after. It has to be protected. That was on the second level. That's why Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wa salamu The Imam states, don't allow your stomachs to be graveyards for animals. These words of the Imam. Don't allow your stomachs to be graveyards for animals. I tell you, if you looked in certain people's stomachs, wallah, there's 20 sheep here, and there's 100 cows here, and God knows what else they put into that stomach. The Imam says that qabristan which you see in your life, don't put that into your stomach. Allow your stomach to be looked after. Allow it to be protected. That's on the second level. Then the third right of your stomach is what? And make sure you restrain it in a time of hunger. Meaning what? Meaning that when you're in a time of hunger, don't constantly complain. This fast of the holy month is too long. There's too many hours here. Just once in the year, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, restrain that stomach. If you can't reach the discipline of restraining the stomach, then you can't reach any discipline within this religion. This stomach, you should be able to reach a level where you are able to restrain it even in the times of hunger. Therefore you found that Ahlul Bayt, when going into the examination of the prohibition of pork, the first thing they stressed was what? The first thing they stressed was make sure you know your stomach has a right over you. And that's why the question arises, are there any times when pork is allowed? There are three opinions which our people put forward. The first opinion is, yes, there are. When you are in a business deal, which is a multi-million-pound deal, and you want to conclude it, there is no harm having a bit of pork at the beginning of the meal. You look at that person and you say to him, where did you get this idea from? Who told you? He says to you, well, you know, this is my rizq, it's my sustenance. And therefore, to complete this deal, I have to make myself as if I'm socially compatible. So this business client of mine says to me, if you're not going to have what I'm eating, or you're not going to drink what I'm drinking, I'm not going to complete the deal. So I normally don't eat pork. But just when I want to complete this deal, I will let the pork go through. You say to him, Allah is the greatest of sustainers. That person's sustenance is limited, whereas your Lord's sustenance is unlimited. If your Lord wants to, He'll bring you a contract 20 times bigger than this one when you go towards Him. When you take a step towards Allah, whatever the deal is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens for you many doors. Unfortunately, in Muslim communities, people compromised their law just so that they could earn a bit of a sum. You told them, what happened to you? You were brought up in a family of principles. Your father and mother instilled in you the religion. But I had to complete the deal, and if it meant I have to sacrifice my religion just for an hour, so I did it. And would you believe it's worse than this? I wish it was just a meal. They'll even go to gatherings of places where haram is acted, just so they satisfy their client. Once the client signs the deal, They say, well, you know, it's not part of my character, but I wanted to push the deal through. That first reason is rejected. Then there's a second reason people put forward. They state you can eat pork. You say to them, when? They say, now there's halal pork. I said, what do you mean halal pork? In Sydney, Australia, recently, they were selling halal pork in supermarkets. So there were certain Muslims who came forward and said, it's halal. You say to them, why is it? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim was said before the pig was slaughtered. That's a person who hasn't understood that the pig is from itself seen as being impure. The pig, like the dog, from its origin is seen as being impure. Every part of it is seen as being impure. For someone to come and say, but I say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, then I slaughter, that's not allowed. Even some who come today, before they eat something haram or forbidden, they state that we say Bismillah, it makes it halal. So what, those few words suddenly change the whole complexion of that food, of that meal? No, that second opinion is rejected. The third opinion is the one we accept. The only time pork is allowed is in a life or death situation. Meaning what? Meaning I'm stranded somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I have absolutely nothing to eat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't make the human being reach a stage where He kills him. No, on the contrary, God says life comes above everything. If you are stranded in the middle of nowhere and all your options are exhausted, then you are allowed to eat from the pig only then and only then, no other time. Therefore you found that the question arose, what was Islam's reasons for prohibiting pork? First of the reasons which was given was physical. In which way? In the idea that Muslims came forward and stated that on the first level, the pig, even when you look at it as an animal, you find that the pig itself has no neck. If there was a neck there, then someone may put forward a case for slaughter. But when there is no neck there from the beginning, automatically you begin to question whether it was even made for slaughter or no. Number two, the amount of uric acid that remains in the body of the pig is unbelievable. This toxic acid, when it remains, when you're going to take in that pig, when you eat pork or you eat the swine or you eat bacon, you're taking in this toxic acid which normally us as humans have excreted. In the idea that from our bodies, let's say 98% of the toxic acid is removed. With the pig, 98% remains. 2% is removed. So when that toxic acid remains in this animal, and then you're going to take it, only God knows what chronic digestive diseases will happen to you because of this. Number three, you find the high levels of fat within the pig. In some cases, the highest levels of fat in any animal are in the pig. God knows what happens to cholesterol in a human being when the human being consistently is taking from this. You find number four, the different types of germs which exist within the pig. That if you were to study some reports which mention many different types of germs which exist within that pig, when you take in that pig, that effect on the digestive system and on the walls which are meant to protect you, these walls are destroyed. Further than this, look at the type of worms that you can have just by eating a pig. As in that worm which produces that disease within the human, trichinosis. That worm which you have, what does it do to you? When it's inside the human being, 10 to 15,000 eggs that worm lays inside your body. 10 to 15,000 eggs. That some journals even went as far as saying that a kilogram of pork has over 400 million of this worm. This worm, when it's within the body and it goes within the bloodstream, it breaks those walls. Before you know it, the effect on the human being and the diarrhea, that is the result. Likewise, other worms, when you read the studies on dysenteric, and you find this worm with 2 heads and 4 branches, which goes within the blood of the human being, you find that from every single angle physically, there is a problem with the pig. That's why a report came out that 1 in 6 Americans within this country has that trichina worm within them. That worm within them because of what? Because of eating of that pig. You find therefore that the chronic diseases that occur within our digestive system, earlier we said that your stomach has a right, that it doesn't become a container for that which is unlawful. Whereas you find the human being comes forward towards an animal. And I tell you, if you were to tell the human being about this animal and describe it to them, they'll say to you, truly it's disgusting. The moment you say to him it's a pig, he'll say to you, but I really enjoy having its dish. The problem is the Quran says, فَلْيَنْظُرُ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِهِ. Let man look at his ta'am. look at what you're eating and reflect on the worms that are coming into your body, then further than the physical, the Quran said it's not just the physical that's the problem. If it was just the physical, someone could have brought about correlatory studies from the other side to prove that no, pork, there is no problem in it whatsoever. Notice the Bible, it had mentioned in the book of Leviticus, the Bible had said very clearly, you don't eat the animals that are the splitters of the hoofs, and the animals that do not chew cud, and the animals that are the formers of the clefts. The Bible had mentioned that you cannot have this animal. Yet in Christianity today, unfortunately, it's become a norm for Christians who wear the cross of Jesus, son of Mary, according to them, to have pork within their lives. The Quran came and said, what? حرمت عليكم الميتة والدم ولحم الخنزير وما أهل لغير الله به. Please listen to this very interesting concept on the internet today. On the internet, if you go and type in Surah 5 verse 3 Arabic, type that on Google. When you type that, which is this verse about how pork is prohibited in Islam, when you type it, there is the first page that comes out is a translation of the Quran by a man called Rashad Khalifa. Rashad Khalifa writes at the bottom of the page, Surah 5 verse 3, he's put an asterisk next to it so you actually read what's written at the bottom. He says, Allah says haram for you is the meat of the pig. That means the lard of the pig, there's no problem with it at all. Notice, the Quran is not a butchery manual. The Quran does not give you every single movement of the whole of the pig. The Quran, when it says to you that this is prohibited, it meant that the whole thing is prohibited. It didn't mean that, yes, the meat is prohibited, but the lard, have as much as you want. The Quran wanted to come forward and said clearly, all of it is prohibited. But the Quran said not just physically, no. The Quran wanted to also show spiritually there is a problem with this animal. What do I mean? When we eat something, don't just think there's a physical effect on that which we eat. There's also a spiritual effect. Have you noticed we're told not to eat the food of certain religions? Sometimes someone says, why can't I eat the food of that religion? What's wrong? It's because if that religion has an energy or an aura about them, where they are willing to worship a God who is besides Allah and make images of God, I don't want that energy into my soul. I'd rather stay away from that energy. I don't want that energy coming near my body. I want an energy which is pure. So when the Quran, for example, came forward, it said, the pig, when you want to eat it, don't just look at the physical studies, no. Look at the character of the pig and see whether you want that character in you. And please, these are delicate points, and I need you to observe them and understand them. The pig, for example, is the only animal in the animal kingdom that enjoys watching other pigs with its partner. I can't go into explicitness because of the wording that is required, but the pig, when it has a partner, if you, for example, see a lion and a lioness, I'd love to see someone coming to mess with a lioness. That lion will destroy that person forever. Because the lion doesn't like anyone coming near his missus. The lion says to you that my missus, if you lay an eye on her, you won't survive in this forest again. The pig enjoys people coming near its missus. And the problem is what? Is that the human being, if he has too much of this animal, will begin to be like him now. Because now, in certain parts of the world, there are human beings who say, I enjoy seeing others with my partner. It actually builds our relationship. You say to him, what are you talking about? It builds your relationship. This is a lack of honor for the female, a lack of dignity for your relationship. He says, no, I want to see somebody in a room with me and my partner. It makes me enjoy life more. What is their eating habit? You find out that in the morning, pig. And in the lunchtime, a pig sandwich, for example, of bacon. And in the evening, you'll have pig. It becomes part and parcel. Someone will say, well, it's not exactly. There isn't an exact correlation. I didn't say there was. No, there isn't an exact correlation. But there is a correlation somewhere there. You can't say 100% of the people transfers. But when you're in a society where there are clubs for this type of act, where a human takes his wife and indulges with another human being, then know that there has to be a background to it, which is what's being taken into the body. That's number one. Number two, the pig lacks the will to fight. In the animal kingdom, you may find me a squirrel. You find a squirrel, you take the nuts of the squirrel, what happens to you? Wallah, that squirrel will not leave you alone. That squirrel looks at you 6'7", it's about 1'1", the squirrel will come and kill you. It will bite you non-stop. The pig looks at you and then you take something from it and it just puts its head down and continues in its area. It lacks the will to fight completely, no interest in fighting. As a human, if I lack fight, I can't survive. If I lack the power to fight against injustice, fight oppression, fight crime, fight that which is evil, that's part of my makeup as a human. I'm a member of a group of people who want to continue to have a peaceful coexistence. If I don't have any willpower within me, or I don't have the will to fight, then I lack that humanity which I need. You find the pig is an animal which lacks that will to go out and fight. Number 3, no animal dislikes sunlight. Well, there may be a few which do, but no animal like the pig. Someone will say, surely not. Go and read many biological studies about the pig. The pig may be seen in sunlight, but it dislikes sunlight. Dislikes sunlight. The pig is a lazy, sluggish animal. If it has a choice, will stay in its excretion the whole day. It will just enjoy sitting in that excretion. To the pig, that's its swimming pool. You leave it in the excretion, it's relaxing. You find that if the human takes this character of being lazy, then you can't call a human a human. Because a human is active. A human goes out to earn. A human goes out to live. The pig's laziness can easily be transferred in the character of the human being. Fourthly, what do you find? You find the pig doesn't mind eating anything, even if its own child is dead on the ground, it will eat it. The pig is a scavenger. As a scavenger, it will eat anything. If you put a human fetus next to it, it will eat it. If you put its own child's fetus, it will eat it. Notice certain parts of the Far East where now stillborn children are a delicacy. In the Far East, now if you go on the internet, type stillborn children as a delicacy for a dinner. People are eating. On the same menu, I guarantee you, on that restaurant, you'll see pork chops and porks and noodles and bacon, all of it's in the same menu. You find when a pig is willing to eat its own, don't be surprised if there's a day when the human is willing to eat their own as well. Likewise, the pig enjoys being in its own feces. Don't be surprised if a human being reaches a stage, especially in the university circles. Someone once came to me and said, knowledge makes a human. I said, have you ever been to Harvard or Oxford in their freshers' fair? He said, what do you mean freshers' fair? I said, you know the first week when university students go to university? They have to enjoy themselves, don't they? They have to really have a good time. I said, have you ever been in their first week? He said to me, why? What happens? I said, go to the top unis in the world in their first week and see if a human acts like a human or like an animal. Don't be surprised if you go there, you'll see human beings behave in a way where you'll never believe this man has the intelligence to go to Oxford. You'll see them taking their clothes off. You'll see them playing about and getting drunk. And then what comes after that, only Allah knows. When you've taken in from this animal, do not be surprised if your behavior becomes like that as well. Therefore, the religion of Islam, what did it say? The prohibition of pork was on 2 levels. The first level was because of physical reasons. The second level was because of spiritual reasons. And that's why when the Imam was asked, why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created these animals like the pig? He said on the first level, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to remind mankind that the biggest humiliation that happened to mankind was when certain members of the children of Israel were turned into this animal. Someone says, what do you mean turned into this animal? Truly turned into the animal? Yes, truly. Because these members of the children of Israel, the Quran mentions how a few of these members were as a punishment for their arrogance towards the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, turned into these animals. Of course, it was a humiliation for them. After that, they ceased to exist. It was a period of a few days, and they ceased to exist. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why did He allow this to happen? It happened in some narrations with those who doubted Jesus, son of Mary, as being a messenger of God. And even on those who didn't perform the Sabbath with Moses, you find that it happened to them. Allah wanted to show a humiliation. That when a human being becomes arrogant and starts moving away from the path of Allah, then there is no difference in his character than that of a pig. And I tell you, us as human beings, what makes us different from animals, honestly? With animals, we eat, they eat. We drink, they drink. They have desires, we have desires. The only difference is our reason, isn't it? It's our reason that makes us high. But when a human being doesn't use their reason, then you find the human being becomes the lowest of the low. And that's why, what do you notice? You notice the Imams of Ahlul Bayt have many narrations where they state there are certain people with certain characteristics. Allah will not allow them to be raised as humans on the Day of Judgment. No. Allah will raise them in the form of a pig as a humiliation on the Day of Judgment. Which types of people? The first types are those who are involved in relationships which are illegitimate, meaning constantly performing adulterous relationships. You find in our communities today many stories emerging day after day. Muslims entertaining relationships either while married in adulterous situations or with people they're not allowed to be in marriages with. As in, when we say you can be with the people of the book, there is a reason. When you hear Muslims today going with people who don't even have a book, without caring twice about the fact that they don't believe in the oneness of Allah, the Imam says that type of person will be raised not as a human, but will be raised as a pig on the Day of Judgment. Number two, those who listen to the music of the musicians. Some will come forward and say, well, that's a bit far-fetched. As in, what's wrong with the music of the musicians? I'm still a good Muslim. I love the Ahlul Bayt. I read the Quran. When you look at these people, you say to them, but look at the words of these musicians. No, look at the videos behind these musicians. When MTV makes a video for a musician, it's not the words which are the trouble. It's the video and the content of the video. The content of the video where women are degraded to below animals, where women have no sanctity whatsoever except as being objects in videos. Every video that comes on that channel, you will find that a woman is degraded as a human being. You find when you are a person who gives a hit to that channel, or to the tunes that are played on that channel, you are part of that industry as well. Because you are someone who wants that industry to continue to grow. Therefore, on the second level, these two. The third level, he says, anyone registered with Bani Abbas and helped Bani Abbas and their government will be raised in this way. Of course, this is metaphorical, that anyone who helps a tyrannical government will be humiliated on the Day of Judgment in the form of a pig. As in, whoever it may be, it could be the nephew of an imam. You know Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, who was one of the causes of his imprisonment? Who was one of the causes? Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, one of the causes of his imprisonment was his nephew Ali. His nephew Ali took a bribe from Harun al-Rashid. Harun al-Rashid had Yahya al-Barmaki tell Ali, the nephew of the Imam, if you come over towards Baghdad, I want you to tell me, what is Musa ibn Ja'far doing in Medina? He replied to him by saying to him, well, I can't see why there's two caliphs, one in Medina and one in Baghdad. This is unacceptable. Imam, before his nephew had left, had said to him, Ali, don't be the cause of my children being fatherless. Don't be the cause of my children losing their dad. What is it that you're going to Baghdad for? He said, oh, I'm just going to relieve some debts. He said, here, take 4,000 dirham, I will relieve your debt. He said to him, no, I have to go. Someone came to the Imam and said, why did you give him money when you know what he's going to do? He said, the person hasn't performed the act. And number two, he's a family member. I should still try and help. What you find is he went to Harun Rashid. Harun Rashid said to him, what do you think? He said, Musa ibn Ja'far has got so much power. Harun Rashid said, very well, here's 4,000 dirhams as well. Do you know this Ali ibn Ismail, when he went back, he was opening the envelope where there's money. He's thinking, I can't wait to count my money. As he's opening it, the angel of death came and took his soul away. Imagine, what did he get from the world? As he's about to take his money, the angel comes to take his soul away. He died, but he put Imam Musa ibn Ja'far in prison. His own uncle. He made him stay in the prison of Baghdad for over 20 years. Over 20 years, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far was in prison because of his nephew. Imam al-Sadiq had mentioned that anyone who had worked for Bani Abbas, Allah will humiliate them on the Day of Judgment by raising them as what? By raising them in the form of a pig as a form of humiliation for them. But there was one line on the 10th of Muharram which highlighted how much Imam al-Hussein was affected by the killing of one of his companions. You know, on the 10th of Muharram, Imam lost many companions. He lost Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi. He lost Muslim ibn Awsaja. He also lost Habib ibn Madahir. He lost all of these companions. But there was one companion in particular who, when Imam al-Hussein saw him fall on the ground, there was one companion who, when the Imam saw him fall on the ground, the Imam, when he saw him, he said, Ya Allah, curse those people who have killed that companion of mine and raised them as pigs on the day of judgment as a humiliation. Who was it? Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. Because the Imam had a love for Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. Zuhair ibn al-Qayn originally was not on the side of the Imam. He was returning back from Hajj. He was returning back towards the land of Kufa with his wife Daylam. When he was in his tent, Imam al-Hussein had known Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, although politically was not with the Imam, was a man of a pure heart. He went and sent a messenger. When that messenger came, he spoke with Zuhair. When Zuhair's wife Daylam looked at Zuhair, she said to him, I see you confused. What's the issue? He said, Hussein ibn Ali has called for me. She looked at him, she said, the son of Fatima al-Zahra calls you and you stay sitting next to me. Go and answer his call. But I ask you one thing. He said to her, what is it? She said to him, if ever there's a day when I become a prisoner and his sister becomes a prisoner, ask him that allow his sister to take me with her. I do not want to be alone. That's why that Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, on the night of the 10th of Muharram, he overheard Sayyidah Zainab telling Imam al-Hussein. He overheard Sayyidah Zainab saying to Imam al-Hussein, are you sure these companions are going to stay with you? When Zuhair heard this, he went back to the tent. He said to them, are you ready to serve the Imam? They said, we're all ready. He came to the Imam. He said, oh Imam, I heard Sayyidah Zainab say, are you sure we're going to serve you? Oh Imam, if I was fighting and they killed me and they chopped me into 1,000 pieces and they raised me again and they chopped me 1,000 pieces, it would be my honor to die for you 1,000 times. I am ready to lay my life. And that's why he came forward with exquisite lines of poetry on the 10th of Muharram when he said, أنا زهير وأنا ابن القين أضربكم بالسيف عن حسيني إن حسينا أحد السبطين من عترة النبي الزكي الزيني ذاك رسول الله غير المين يا ليت نفسي قسمت قسمين. The narration states that on the 10th of Muharram, when Zuhair ibn al-Qayn was lying on the ground, his wife Daylam saw the servant of the family. His wife Daylam called out, I want you to go and look for the body of my husband Zuhair, and I want you to cover his body with a piece of cloth. When the servant went out on the ground in Karbala, he went out and he looked for the body of Zuhair. When he looked for the body, he came back. Daylam looked at him and she said, did you cover the body of my husband? He replied to her by saying, no, I didn't. She said to him, why? He said, because as I was about to cover his body, I saw the holy body of Ammar lying on the ground with no one to cover the body of Imam al-Hussein. So I went towards the body of Ammar and I laid the piece of cloth on the body of Imam al-Hussein. She replied to him by saying, Jazakallah khairul jaza. The poet says, she said the following lines, how could I have my husband's body covered by a piece of cloth when the son of Fatima al-Zahra's body lies without anyone to cover his wounds? How can I care for my husband when the son of Fatima al-Zahra has horses trampling across his body when he lay on the ground? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the following dua. Oh Allah, allow us to be amongst the companions of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. Hasten the reappearance of our Imam. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all our Muslim brothers around the Islamic world, especially our brothers in Pakistan. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it, the loudest of your salawat.